Slurpy dirt, my G's. How's it going? It's there's a sock and coffee. Today I've got a little video for you guys. No editing again. I might put a couple of clips in. Basically, yesterday I was just about to make this video on some tips for a sub bass and a few ideas in how you can make an even better one in Vital with more harmonics, getting some nice movement in to get it to stand out a little bit and be a little bit more interesting than normal. And I was midway through, about to record the video, and then the sun started shining, and it's been raining quite a lot here in Medellin in the last couple of weeks. And so I just thought, I really got to go out and get my face in that sun. So I went outside. I had my phone on me, but I had no battery. And then for some reason, I ended up just going to the whole other side of the city, which is quite far away, and just going on a mad exploring rampage, which was wicked, but I completely forgot to finish making the YouTube video. So anyway, it's the next morning. I've got a mango. I've got some coffee. So let's dive into it. Here's a little clip or a little loop that I've made. The drums are pretty dope, to be fair, but we're going to focus on this little sub bass that I've got here called Picture a Sub. But let's have a quick listen first. Now, obviously, if you're listening through a Samsung TV, then it's going to sound terrible. But if you're listening on half-decent speakers or good headphones, then you'll hear that this sub-bass / low-end warm bass is actually really quite nice and textural and warm and fluffy. Yeah, I really like it, and I just want to talk through a few things that I do in Vital or did in Vital to get this sound, which are things that you can play with in your own synthesis journey. And so let's start off with turning off the effects, our Michael Bay unwanted dinner guest effects. I say that because I don't like movies with loads of special effects like Michael Bay movies, because it makes me fall asleep for some reason. When I watched Transformers for the first time, I fell asleep after about 20 minutes because I need a captivating storyline, What happened to films like The Usual Suspects, things like that. That's keeping me awake and excited on the edge of my seat. All this AI generated nonsense, it's just boring to me. Anyway. So what we do is we have the sub bass is the main one is down here, but it goes through a couple of carriers, right? So essentially one sine wave gets carried into the next one, and that goes into the third one, but we only have the volume from the last one. Yeah. And for my movement, I've got just a saw down LFO. And here's one thing I do a lot is have 2 points, even if it's just a saw down a curve, having a point in the middle, so you have 2 elements to control the shape. You can get a little bit more accurate. And here I've got an LFO sandwich as well. So Chris Him, if you're watching and you want me to explain it again, I've tried to explain it many times before, but basically the LFO1, it has its normal rhythm. Here it's 1/4 dotted. That's just what it's set up as. And down here you can change the start position, whereabouts in the LFO pattern the sound is going to start, just by changing that. And if you automate that slider on another LFO, so staying on LFO1, dragging LFO2, putting it onto the slider here of LFO1, then you can keep skipping between whereabouts on the LFO1 the sound actually is at that moment. So by drawing in a new pattern on the LFO2, every time you have these parts that go up, it's going to cause the LFO1 phase position to skip around randomly, and then that's going to allow you to create more interesting rhythms and offbeat little fun parts. So here every time it goes up, it's going to just mess with the rhythm that I've got from the LFO1. So it's going to make it more interesting, right? But yeah, the main part that I wanted to talk about is the pitch modulation that I've done. So what am I actually moving with the main LFO? Well, I'm actually like moving the pitch up and down a lot. So on this, let's turn off the oscillated one and go on here. And what I'm doing is I've got it at -24, the first one, and the pitch is going down to -12. So we're having this like kind of pitch down effect every time, yeah. But on the oscillator 2, it's doing the opposite. It's going up 12. So if I turn that up, so this one's pitching up while the other one's pitching down. But then we actually turn off the level from the first one. Okay, and then, you know, because the FM is going from the first one into the second one here. Obviously, it's just quite normal like that with the pitch up. But when I add the pitch down sign, some really nice harmonics there. It's a nice balance, and it doesn't sound like that weird, yeah, overly pitching up effect because you've got the other one that's pitching down. So it's a nice blend. And then what happens next is I add in the third oscillator and we take that down again. So we're just having the output from the third one. And this one's just -24 and this has got no pitch modulation. So we're just getting the result of the pitch down from the first one, going into the pitch up from the second one, blended together through the FMs, and then comes into the final output via FM from oscillator 2, yeah? So obviously you got to find the balance. Too high, you start to lose that low sub, you know? But we just want a bit of that harmonic, so that's why we just blend a little bit in. So I've got that main, you know, low sub part, and then I've got our FM'd kind of weird effects that we created with the first two sine waves. So that's like the main basis of the sound already. But if you'll notice here, what I've done is I've also unisoned the top one. Because without that, we've got quite a, yeah, well, it's just a completely mono sub, yeah? But by unisoning this one, just at 7% as well, so it's a little bit tighter. Tight like a tiger. It's a little bit of detuning, but it's on one of the carriers, you know? The volume output of this is not actually coming out, but because we're stereoing the carrier, that stereo information still goes through the FM of the second one and into the third one. So although it's not actually outputting, we're still like introducing that stereo unison into the chain, which is going into the final output. But yeah, the most important thing when you do that is, because it's like we're dealing with low end and subs and things, is to make sure you crack open a mid-side EQ and take out that rumbly information in the sides only. Yeah, around between 80 and 100 hertz or something. Just so the speaker can have an easier job of replicating the sound, because you can't get stereo that low down in a speaker. All right, so that's the cool thing that I wanted to share with you guys, is the -12 pitch drop with the +12 pitch boost on the same LFO, but the levels are both down and they both go through an FM chain into the final sub. And then you'll notice here I've got the Shepherd tone mode on. And what this does is, although it like introduces cool harmonics, it changes the pitch. So if you have it all the way at the left or all the way at the right, you're going to be in key again. But in the middle, you start to lose, yeah, the key of the note. And in this case, it kind of sounds terrible. But what I've done is I've blended it like ever so slightly back on the LFO. And I imagine that it's almost doing like a bit of a pitch vibrato, or it's doing like a little bit of a, yeah, just like messing with the pitch a little bit. Because if I go all the way back, Okay, it's not so bad because it happens so quickly because the LFO brings it back down again. But yeah, it like gets really out of pitch, you know. But if I just do it a little bit, but by messing with the pitch, again, it's the same reason for why I was messing with the pitch on the first two. It's because the changes in the pitch will like help the sub like have more impact by it's almost like you're kind of shifting the frequencies of it, and so that's going to help the speaker be able to like give it some movement so that it will punch through like a sound system more. Because like if you was just flat with no pitch like interest at all, it would be quite sustained and it would be quite boring. But having these little changes in the pitch are what help give it the movement. So without having to like dip the volume of the sub up and down, by playing with the pitch of it, you're able to introduce extra life into the sub so that it actually feels louder and more interesting as well. So it's kind of a trick in the mind, you know, because having the frequencies moving a bit by shifting the pitch around gives the impression that it has more energy, yeah, even if it's just a little bit. So that's why I've done that here. So yeah, we got that pitch movement on the oscillator 1 and 2. We've got the unison to give a bit of stereo, but we're making sure to take some of that low end out in the sides. Then we've got this random little, again, pitch adjustment here. I've got a tiny bit of noise, and this comes in on the FM sample, and you see it's like 0.6%. But yeah, somewhere like around 1% or a little bit under. What it's going to do, if you struggle to get it like completely accurate, you can just add a macro, bring that back a little bit, or let's bring it down to 0 and then bring it up like a little bit here. Now we have a more precise control. So my idea is to get like just a tiny bit of fuzz that's almost undetectable, but it just helps to fill out the high end of the sub just a little bit. And then the byproduct of that is it'll boost the whole sound a bit more because it'll be a little bit of a fuller frequency sub bass. And yeah, even if it's just a tiny bit, it will just make it sound a little bit more natural. Like you were kind of making a real sub bass from a hardware, you know, and there was like a little bit of a noise in the signal chain from the cable or something. It's like a weird artificial like thing to add in, but it just sounds better. Just take my word for it. And then, yeah, so I've got a couple of extra filters as well to provide a bit of extra movement, but you can see they're very subtle. I've turned the mix down on them quite a lot. And all I do here is I take a little part of the mid-range or wherever I think is sounding quite nice in the harmonic, and I just put that on the cutoff of the, I just modulate the cutoff on the LFO. But yeah, just introduces more life and movement again. And I'm only doing it from oscillator 3 because that's the only one that's got actually the audio output. Driving it up a bit and like modulating the mix as well. But yeah, we've got one phaser positive, one phaser negative, getting the best of both worlds. Hove is 50-50 brown and white bread. And you can see here the sub here is actually 24 as well. So the very minor tuning, like not the main tuning, but just the kind of, what's it called? The fine tuning, slightly different. And that's just you can always tune the fine tuning slightly off because it doesn't really matter in the long run, because it's still going to be around that same root note. It's just like playing with the timbre, the tone of it, like a little bit, but it's not really changing the pitch like enough to make it a different note. So that's a cool way you can just get an extra edge to the tone to make it a little bit better. Okay, that's the main part of the oscillator section. So then in the effects, we just like add a couple of extra little bits. I've mentioned this before, the compressor on multiband, think of it as saturation. Turn up the attack all the way and the release down all the way, and then it's massively like saturating the sound, and I just use a tiny bit of it. And here is where you hear like it's going to really saturate the high end, mostly like kind of OTT. And so that noise that we had earlier, you'll start to hear it like a lot more. That's why I also did it pretty quietly to begin with, because it's going to be boosted up later. So we can bring that back down again a bit. Yeah. Then distortion, I think we have just it's almost on 0 dB, but it's like slightly modulating up on the LFO. So it's just slight bit of a pump every time that LFO restarts. And also having the distortion just sort of turning it on, even at 0, it's already slightly active, so it actually already distorts a little bit. But the thing with the sub basses, or like the low sine kind of basses, is you'll quickly destroy them by distorting them. So that's why I use it in really, really small amounts. If I want to make like a low end sub bass kind of thing, it's just important to like use all the effects in a really, really small amount. Like you can kind of get away with not even using them, and it's going to be good enough. But I'm just trying to do like an extra sort of 5% of like interest, pretty much. It's not like much. The EQ, you can feel free to go crazy with the EQ. If you feel like you need to add more bass, it's good to do it here, I think, in the sound design process, rather than EQing it afterwards. I find it's nicer to do it like straight away. If you've got to like get a bit more volume from your sub, do it in the synth. So that's what I've done here. A little bit of a high-end shelf, and then another filter at the end. And what I do here is like, if I want to do like get more low-end weight into the sound by compromising some of the high end, so it's sort of like a trade-off. So I'll turn the mix up, and you've got like a low-pass filter going on. And then if we just play with that, play with the LFO amount and the position, try and get a really nice weighty low-pass sound. Yeah. And then once we got that like low power, we can just bring it back again and find a nice sweet spot. So just sacrifice a bit of the kind of high end and try and get a little bit more sort of dynamic movement in the low end. So that's why I sometimes do that, like a mixed in low pass filter. But yeah, turn it up first, get a nice dynamic movement, and then mix it back a bit. So there we are, there we have it. That's pretty much, I think, explained most of the parts. But yeah, I guess the most interesting thing that I did was this pitch down -12, at the same time pitching up +12, and then FMing those like into each other and then into the final sub, and using the FM to like blend some of those harmonics that we created into it. And there's your mango pretty much. And then like I've just LFO'd it a little bit to the kick here. Like I said, taking out some of that stereo in the low end. And then obviously that's the rhythm that I've got with the sort of LFO, but you could do anything really, I mean, here it sounds a bit better when it's faster. That one's pretty cool as well. And I could change the my LFO sandwich, the LFO that's triggering the changes in movement of LFO1. I could redraw that pattern, or I could just adjust the slider here to change the timing as well. So right now it's starting in the middle of this one, but I could change it to start at the beginning again. Just pay attention to the rhythm. That's pretty cool. Maybe I want to keep that going for a bit longer. Or actually, no, maybe I want to have it shorter. I want to get faster again. Yeah. So that's pretty cool as well. So you can you could also just play it in MIDI, perhaps, and try and draw in an interesting pattern by hitting your keyboard. But I like it like this because you get like more random, it's more AI generated. So you can get some like interesting rhythms that you might not have come up with yourself because you're probably not clever enough. Yeah, just kidding. Anyway, thanks for watching today, guys. Hope that helps you out. Hope it inspires you a little bit to try and think of interesting ways to improve the movement and texture of your bases, especially your sub. And yeah, thanks a lot. If you're not subscribed, make sure you do. It helps me out a lot. And check out my website for presets, mentorship, one-on-one sessions, and t-shirts. I don't know, whatever else you want. Have a great day. Peace out.